Hello, I'm Brigantia, Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Tuesday and welcome back to Pagan Problems. Let's talk about the things we should do during Mercury retrograde, because it does go retrograde several times a year, and once again, the time is upon us. And I've been reviewing some information about this subject, and more often than not, I'm reading about all the things we're not supposed to do during Mercury retrograde. And that's all well and good. I mean, it's information we definitely benefit from having, but I have observed that it's much more productive to contemplate what we can do or what we would benefit from doing during this time rather than focusing on what we should avoid. Because I don't know about you, but being told what not to do, that usually ends with me having a desire to do it, or feeling frustrated by refraining, or just counting the minutes until I'm released from limbo. And given the fact that our current Mercury retrograde will last in full force until October 2nd, 2022, I think it would be much more pleasant to shift gears from what we can't do and think about how we can best utilize this time. So the watchwords I keep at the forefront of my mind are rethink, review, reorganize. It's about turning inwards a little bit and making sure that we have all of our ducks in a row. Now, on the practical front, this means it's the best time to sort out your paperwork, to clean out the closets, do a thorough deep cleaning of the house, get the garden in order, and make sure any vehicles you operate are properly maintained. And then spiritually, this is an ideal moment to reflect upon where you are and if that status quo is still serviceable for you, or if it's time to make adjustments. Some people like to start journals during Mercury retrograde just to help aid in their own reflections and as a way for them to chart their progress. However, there are other tips that I've been collecting from all over the place that I want to share in this video to help us weather this Mercury retrograde a little more gracefully. And the first is for us to lean more heavily on our intuition rather than our logic during the retrograde. The thing about logic is that in order to function properly, it has to possess good information and as much information as possible. Well, we know during a Mercury retrograde, communication is well, it's not at its best, and a lot of times we run across information that isn't necessarily the most accurate, even at the best of times. But if we listen to our intuition, we can cut through some of that noise. And instead of getting paralyzed by knowing that we don't know everything we need to know, or wondering if what we know is actually true, if we just listen to that intuition, it can help us retain our ability to take action when we need to, rather than getting stuck worrying about what we know and what we don't. Also, if we are facing difficulties, it would be wise not to rely upon our old solutions. Sometimes we have very reliable solutions and a very effective approach, but during the retrograde, this is the time to explore different perspectives, consider other possible courses of actions, do something a little bit out of the ordinary. And speaking of that, it would probably be best for all of us to embrace more flexibility. And if you have a lot of cardinal signs in your chart or a lot of fixed signs in your chart, this is going to be much more difficult. Now, for mutable signs, this is a little bit more your wheelhouse. But for the rest of us, we're going to have to learn how to be a little bit less rigid in our approach. And this can be whether we are communicating with someone, whether we are using our electronic devices, or if we happen to be traveling. There might be more than the usual bends in the road, and we should just go into it with that understanding and realizing that sometimes the plan can't be the most important thing. Sometimes we need to think about what is the overarching goal and realize that as long as we are still heading towards that goal, we're okay. This is also a good time to indulge in our creative pursuits, whether or not you have an established hobby or you decide to take up something new, just get those creative juices flowing and expressed. And also, you might consider a digital detox. Now, it wasn't that many years ago when we were not so constantly connected to the internet and all of our various gadgets and gizmos, and we were not so attached and confronted with the outside world all the time. So if we can get away from our devices and let the noise of social media and all the rest of the world just kind of attend to itself for a few weeks, that can have a very good effect upon our nerves. So that's something to think about. Other ways to help us manage heightened levels of stress would be to take up yoga or another form of exercise. Just releasing some of that nervous, anxious energy physically can go a long way to keeping us somewhat sane in our minds. Also, it would be a good idea to try and tie up any loose ends and conclude any old business that we've had hanging over our heads. And we should double check everything, particularly texts, emails, packages, anything we send out into the world, reflect before we actually hit the send button. And we could also meditate more often and try different forms of meditation. Clearing out our mental clutter is just as vital at this time as clearing out physical clutter or clearing out excess demands upon our time. And above all, this is an opportunity for us to break old habits. We can come out of Mercury retrograde in a better state of health on every level than we were when it began. So, those are just a few ideas. If you have any effective Mercury retrograde survival techniques, let me know in the comments section, or go to the description box, click on the link to our Gilded server. It's called Blackbird's Brew. We have an astrology channel, and I'm sure everyone would be very happy to hear about additional ideas you might have about how to make this fractious time just a little less stressful. So that will do it for today, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.